ReefDudes is sponsored by Ecotech Marine and Bulk Reef Supply. So every time I do a battery backup video, there's always someone that asks, can it run the whole tank and what would it take? So today, we're gonna find out. What's going on, guys? Devin from ReefDudes. So it never fails, I constantly get asked on any battery backup video, can this run a whole tank? Now I normally would advise people just worry about flow. It takes a lot more power to run your lights, your skimmer, everything else than it does to run a power head or just a return pump. So economically speaking, your best bang for your buck is to just have a battery backup for some flow in your tank. Now there's crazy people out there like me that want to know, can we run the whole tank? What does it take? How long can we run it for? Well, today we're gonna answer those questions. And the heart of any battery backup is of course the battery. So for this one, we have a 12 volt, 300 amp hour Power Queen battery. Now, I needed a 300 amp one to go with my inverter, so shout out to Power Queen for that. Definitely appreciate you guys supporting my crazy ideas. Now, with this, the other half of this is going to be the inverter. Now, with an inverter, if you are using it for sensitive equipment, you know, fancy lights, controllers, I would recommend a pure sine wave inverter. This one is of course super overkill, but this is a 3000 watt pure sine wave inverter. I've actually had this for a couple years now. I bought it for backup and never actually used it. So today is gonna be its maiden voyage. Now for most tanks, a regular 15 amp, kind of 1500 watt one would be plenty. You could run 2 tanks with this, but again, your runtime is gonna depend on your battery. And you also need to consider the efficiency of the inverter. This one says at least 85% or more, which means we're gonna lose 10 to 15% of efficiency due to converting it from DC to AC. So that is something to consider. And if we look at our battery, we have 3,840 watt hours. And if we take 85% of that, we got 3264. So that's how many watt hours we can run for. Now, how do we know how much power a tank consumes? Well, if you have an Apex that has power monitoring, that gives you a really easy way to figure it out. So if I look at the power log for the last 24 hours on the tank beside me, minimum 109 watts, maximum 250 watts, and the average 164 watts. So this has been the past week. It's been hot, no heaters, so not counting the heaters. So if we take our 3264 divided by 164 watt average, would give us just shy of 20 hours of runtime for the entire tank. Now as a comparison, if we take a look at the water box, and that's minimum 211, maximum 720, average 415. So 3840 times 0.85 would give us 7.8 hours. So my water box, you know, my calcium reactor, my 5XR30s, my MP60s, everything on there, we get just shy of 8 hours of runtime. But in a normal practical instance, you know, you're an extended power outage, you know, probably skip the lights, probably skip the skimmer, probably skip the heaters and concentrate on the flow, but let's hook it all up and see if we can run it all. Now, of course, whenever you're comparing batteries, always take a look at the watt hours. This is how many watts you can run for how many hours. Super easy, just divide however many watts your load are, divided by the watts, and that tells you how long you can run it. Now, if you are using an inverter, you will have to take into account the efficiency loss, and most of those will tell you in the manuals. Now, hooking these up is actually pretty simple. Really, all you gotta do is connect the positive and the negative terminals. Now, most inverters will come with cables. Now, you should always make sure you have a fuse in line, and this comes with one, so it makes it nice and easy. The nice thing about having an inverter like this is you can expand your runtime based on how many batteries you have. So you could always just add a second battery and double your runtime. Or if you had something like solar, you could have it recharging as you're using it and extending your runtime. And the other big consideration is what the BMS is in the battery, and that's the battery management system. Now, some might only be able to handle, you know, 100 amps or 200 amps, and that is something you gotta consider. If it's 12.8 volts at a 200 amp BMS, you times 12.8 times 200, which gives us 2400. So that means we could draw 2400 watts of power before the BMS would shut off. Now, the other big consideration too is making sure you're using proper size wiring. This one we have 0 gauge wiring, and this is what it came with. And of course, the 3000 watts is overkill for most tanks. I would recommend, you know, a 1500 watt one would be plenty for most. So if we turn it on, should power it on. We got our USB ports. With this particular one, if we wanted, we also do have a remote screen. So you could have it somewhere remote, you know, if you had it in a van or something like that, or, you know, maybe this is in your garage and it's powering stuff in the house, you could have it remotely. Convenient thing right now is I have this whole tank running on one EB832. So it's going to be really easy to plug it into this and give it a proper test. All right, so we got our tank off, plug it into the inverter. And now we are running 100% off of our battery backup. Tank refilling, got our radions on, skimmer is going, apex is going, everything's running. And of course we can see on here we got 13.43 volts of power coming in. So it's pretty cool that we can actually do this. I'm a little bit curious what extra data we get off of the screen. Alright, so on the screen we got 115 volts out, and we're only drawing 103 watts right now. So at the current wattage we'd last quite a while, but we know off our calculations of the average over 24 hours we get about 20 hours out of it. But yeah, again, right now you can see the lights are dimming down, so it's not sucking a ton of juice. So you know, if we're only drawing 109 watts, now we're getting about 97 watts, so divided by 97, so we get about 33 hours of runtime in its current state. And this is with the lights kind of dimmed down and the skimmer running. So basically 4 MP40s, the skimmer, the apex, return pump, all that jazz running, we get about 33 hours of running. So basically without the radions, you get 33 and a half hours. And with them, we're going to drop it down to closer to 20 hours. But gives you a pretty cool idea. And it's some pretty sweet setup. You can see the temperature of it, 26 degrees, 13.4 volts. So, you know, pretty slick. So for all you crazy people that keep asking what it would take to run a whole tank off battery backup, there you go. The tank is currently running off of the 3000 watt inverter, running at about 150 watts, and this 300 amp hour Power Crane battery. Now again, shout out to Power Crane for hooking me up with this and helping me do these crazy videos. Now for the average person, I would recommend just hooking your power heads up to the battery itself. I could probably run my MP40s, all 4 of them, for probably 2 weeks off this baby. Tons of runtime. But again, if you want to be crazy and run your whole entire tank, this is kind of what it takes. You know, you need probably a 1500 watt inverter would run anything you want. You don't need a 3000, this was overkill. But something like this, along with a solid battery like the Power Queen, you know, the more amp hours, the better. But it's a really cool way to build an awesome battery backup. And again, if you need to sell the spouse on this could not just be for the tank. You know, maybe you can run your fridges, you can do other stuff with it. So there's a lot more practical uses for this beyond just the aquarium. Now, as always, guys, if you enjoyed this, be sure to hit that like button. If you want to pick up anything, check out the links in the description below. If any questions, let me know in the comments, and I'll catch you guys on the next video.